Donald Trump's latest executive order on healthcare, signed with great fanfare and sold as a step toward lowering costs for Americans, is in reality a Trojan horse for the pharmaceutical industry, one that quietly advances Big Pharma's long-held agenda while offering the public only vague promises and symbolic gestures. Under the surface, this is not a healthcare reform to celebrate, but one to scrutinize deeply. The American people are once again being sold a narrative of savings and reform, while the real beneficiaries are the multibillion-dollar drug makers who have lobbied for precisely these changes for years. At the heart of the order is a directive to change the timeline under which Medicare can negotiate drug prices. Specifically, Trump's order calls for a delay in price negotiation eligibility for small molecule drugs, primarily pills, from the current 9 years to a longer 13-year wait, aligning them with the timeline for more complex biologic drugs. This sounds technical, but it's an enormous win for the pharmaceutical lobby. It means that for an additional 4 years, drug companies can continue charging exorbitant, unregulated prices on the vast majority of medications prescribed to seniors before the government can step in to negotiate on behalf of taxpayers. This is not a marginal policy tweak. It is a retreat from one of the few cost-saving victories in recent years: the drug price negotiation provisions secured under the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act. That legislation, while imperfect, marked a long overdue shift in policy, giving Medicare limited but historic authority to finally push back on runaway drug prices. Now, Trump is trying to reverse the clock, cloaking the effort in the language of reform while handing the pharmaceutical industry a gift worth tens of billions of dollars in future profits. It's no coincidence that drug makers have lobbied for exactly this timeline change. They understand the stakes. Every year a blockbuster drug escapes price negotiation is another year of windfall profits at the expense of elderly Americans and the Medicare system. It is worth emphasizing just how critical this change is, not for innovation, as the industry claims, but for profit. The U.S. already pays the highest prescription drug prices in the world. Seniors skip doses, split pills, or avoid filling prescriptions entirely because of the costs. This change only ensures that status quo will endure longer. Even more concerning is that this executive order cannot legally enact the delay on its own. Trump is relying on Congress to follow through and change the law. But the danger here is in the normalization. This order creates political momentum and institutional pressure to balance the system in favor of pharmaceutical companies, even as Americans are already drowning in medical debt and chronic underinsurance. It primes the legislative pump to make the next betrayal of public interest appear like a bipartisan compromise. The order also includes directives that seem more favorable to the public on the surface, encouraging state-level drug importation programs, expanding generics and biosimilars, and aligning Medicare payment rates more closely with hospital pricing. But let's be clear, these are policy distractions that mask the deeper rollback. State-level importation programs are symbolic at best. Only Florida has received FDA approval so far, and Canada has repeatedly stated it does not have the drug surplus to supply the U.S. on a large scale. These initiatives look good on paper, but have been stalled by bureaucracy, opposition from the pharmaceutical lobby, and international resistance. Similarly, calls to streamline generic and biosimilar approvals are not new, and while beneficial, they do little to correct the deeper structural power imbalance between manufacturers and patients. These steps are the policy equivalent of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, while the healthcare system continues to sink under the weight of unaffordable medications. It's also impossible to ignore the timing and broader political context. This order comes just days after Trump's administration launched a so-called national security review into the pharmaceutical industry, another step that opens the door to sector-specific tariffs, which could further drive up drug prices domestically. If tariffs are placed on key pharmaceutical ingredients or finished medications, manufacturers will simply pass those costs on to consumers. Americans could find themselves paying more for the same essential drugs, not less. Trump is once again selling economic nationalism with one hand while enabling corporate greed with the other. His administration talks about reducing costs, but empowers the very actors responsible for inflating them. This is a fundamental betrayal of the working and middle-class Americans who believe that their government is finally stepping in to ease their healthcare burden. Instead, They're being led into a trap, an illusion of reform that tightens the pharmaceutical industry's grip on the nation's most vulnerable populations. Meanwhile, the drug industry continues to hide behind the tired myth that price regulation stifles innovation. But the truth is that pharmaceutical R&D spending is dwarfed by marketing budgets and shareholder returns. These companies are not cash-strapped scientists trying to bring life-saving drugs to market. They are profit-maximizing corporations that routinely prioritize the development of high-margin, low-impact, me-too drugs that add little therapeutic value but extend patent life and market dominance. This order, if followed through by Congress, would weaken Medicare's negotiating power, erode savings achieved under the previous administration, and deepen the crisis of affordability in American healthcare. It sets the stage for longer monopolies, higher prices, and more suffering, particularly for the elderly and chronically ill who rely on Medicare to survive. In the end, Trump's executive order is a stark reminder of who truly benefits when populist rhetoric meets corporate lobbying. The American public is told it's about cutting costs and restoring fairness. But the fine print tells a different story, one of deregulation for the powerful, delay for the people, and a healthcare future increasingly dictated by industry giants who know that in Washington, their interests still come first.